Hi there, I'm Paul Mitchell, leadership coach, author and founder of The Human Enterprise. Today I'd like to talk to you about a huge subject which we're going to actually trim down a little to make it easier to digest, easier to work with, and that is the importance of culture. In fact, building a high performance culture. First of all, you have culture. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have a culture. The thing is whether you've deliberately created that or just let it morph by itself. I suggest if you want to build a high performance culture, you have to take control of that. People used to say that culture was an important part of strategy, that culture trumps strategy. Now, of course, the saying is that culture is strategy. So let's have a look at one aspect of building a high performance culture and three things you can do about that. And the aspect is this: holding people accountable. Have you heard it before? We need to hold people accountable. We need to hold people accountable. Well, I want to unpack that a little bit. First of all, if you're holding people accountable, if you're not careful, you could have what we call a culture of compliance, that people think they have to do stuff. Yeah, that's okay, but up to a point. You'll never get total passion. You'll never get full commitment, full soul if you have a culture of compliance. What you want is a culture of commitment. And that says not I have to, but I want to. I must do this. That's what I want to talk about. 3 points that will give you that culture of commitment. Number one, ask people for their commitment. So when you're delegating, when you're giving anybody anything to do, not the small stuff, but particularly major projects, simply ask, do I have your commitment on that? Or what's your level of commitment on that? A scale of 1 to 10. But actually ask people for their commitment. Don't just assume that they are committed, and don't just assume they are giving it to you. The second point is look at your own behaviour. So often we will delegate and we won't follow up. People will miss a deadline, we don't say anything. Your expectations are there, people are performing here and nothing's being said. In fact, have you ever inherited someone in a team whose behaviour is way below expectations but nothing was ever done about it? Why? Because no one called it. So that's what I want you to think about. Are you calling enough? When people are not performing to the level of expectation that you have, are you calling it? I'm saying to do it in a very, very respectful way, but are you calling it? Do you what we call strocus refocus? Hey, you're okay, but the behaviour isn't. Hey, appreciate you're busy and we have to get it done by here. So do you call it? Do you what I call put the bowling ball on the table, move towards the tension, or it will go underground and eventually it'll pop up and bite you. So very, very important. Ask yourself again and again, do I call it? If not, you'll become what we call an enabler. You enable people not to be committed. You enable people not to take account. We have a saying that I think I got from the clinical work, which was, we teach people how to treat us. My question to you is, what are you teaching people with your own behaviour in terms of accountability? And the third point is to talk about consequences, share consequences. And there's two sets of consequences. There's logical consequences on one hand, and on the other hand, as they say, there's emotional consequences. I have always found that emotional or social consequences are greater, particularly in a team which are connected. And that's the key, that the team has to be connected. Sure, talk about the fact that if you don't get this report done, we can't make decisions. But more importantly, talk about, hey, if you don't get this done, where someone's missing out, you're letting someone down. That social consequence is often more powerful than the logical consequence. I had a situation the other day, someone had got a couple of speeding fines, then they started to lose points, and then we had the discussion. I said, wow, what will that mean for you? They didn't talk about losing their license. They talked about the fact that they couldn't drop their kids off to school and they couldn't actually take their mum to a clinic that she had to go to. Notice it wasn't just the loss of license, it was the social consequence of that. So as a leader, bind your team together and talk about social consequences. Let me finally share with you a quote that I love about quality control and compliance versus commitment. It's an old Greek saying, and it says this, that men that build ships for their sons to go to war don't need quality control. The commitment is already there. And that's what I'd love you to do. I'd love you to start to develop a high-performing culture of commitment, not compliance. So there we have it. Building a high-performance culture. 3 simple and, once again, powerful strategies. 1, ask people for their commitment. Number 2, look to your own behaviour. Call it. And number 3, emphasize the social as much as the logical consequences if people are not performing to expectation. This is no open sesame. There is so much about culture, but I found those 3 simple little techniques, strategies, ideas, way of thinking will help you start to build that wonderful culture of commitment, not compliance. I'm Paul Mitchell. Find the passion, develop the skills, make the numbers, and make a difference.